This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by three amazing people, Super Inframan, Allison Cook, and 36 Dingo. If you want to become a patron or a sponsor, go to wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? And from the depths of the past, I have Timothy Renner of Strange Familiars.
From parts unknown.
I don't know how long it's been. It's probably been a couple of months, but we'll go with years. It's been years since you've been on this show.
So long. When I used to play with Stone Breath, I always have, they would, we play a show with other bands and stuff. They would announce it, and they'd say the announcer goes like, "Where are you guys from?" I say, "Parts unknown." They always say, "And from parts unknown, it's Stone Breath."
So the old wrestling intro.
Yeah.
So it's been a while though since you have been on. We should tell people right up front you've started a second podcast.
Yes, an additional, not instead of.
Right.
Strange Familiars is the mothership. This is an additional podcast called The Flowered Path. It's about saints. It is a very Strange Familiars take on saints, I would think. I think people will be interested in it, but it is about saints. So if fair warning going into it.
Yeah, it's and what when you say saints, these are people the Catholic Church has ordained as saints.
Well, folk saints, which are not canonized saints. So I haven't done any yet, but the plan is to do folk saints. There are plenty of folk saints which aren't canonized by the church. There are Orthodox saints from the Orthodox Church. And honestly, I'm going to do saints from Eastern religions as well. It's not going to be. I'm Catholic, so there's going to be plenty of that. But I plan on covering. There are Buddhist saints and saints from other Eastern religions and stuff, and I plan on covering those too to the best of my ability.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah.
Are they? Do they actually use the word saint, or is it just a similar type of thing?
Well, in Western literature, they'll be referred to as saints. Okay. I don't know if that's just like it's the Western
version of it.
Yeah, a person in the West decided, well, that's equivalent to a Western saint, or if they have a similar word that is translated as saint. This is all research I need to do.
Okay. How many episodes are out now?
5.
Okay.
5, and it's a whenever I can get to it kind of podcast. The first few of them dropped weekly, but that's because I'd worked on it over the whole summer and had a bunch ready to go.
And it's just you.
It's just me telling stories. So I'll research a certain saint or a group of saints. The most recent one is on the cephalophores, the saints that had their heads cut off and supposedly carried their heads afterwards. Some of them walked, 2 miles with their heads. Some of them prayed, held their head in their hands and prayed. Just, neat stories about people getting their head cut off and living afterwards.
Huh. I've never heard that.
Yeah, fun stuff. Like I said, it's a very Strange Familiars take on the subject.
And why saints?
I became very interested in them, and I started reading about them, and I have too many books to write. So I wanted to do something with this information, and I thought, I can't write another book at this time. I'm behind, I'm probably like 10 books behind what I need to write. So I thought, well, I'll just do another podcast. Do it about saints.
Okay. All right. And of course, this doesn't take any of your Strange Familiars time. This is an addition.
It's in addition to, yes. Strange Familiars is still coming out weekly, still the 2 shows a month for the patrons. That's the main thing. And then my hope is, I build the Flowered Path up to a bigger podcast. But if it stays the way it is, that's fine too. It's fine if it's just a nice little side project. I'm okay with that.
Where's the name come from?
The first saint that we covered is Saint Leonard, and there's a sort of an apocryphal story about him. He wasn't in England, but this story, there's a place in England called St. Leonard's Wood where there was supposedly a dragon. And St. Leonard, or maybe perhaps his apparition, perhaps he bilocated to England. But anyway, St. Leonard was said to have hunted this dragon down and killed it. But he got wounded in the fight, and where the dragon wounded him, bit him presumably, his blood fell onto the ground, and they said everywhere his blood drops hit the ground, a white lily grew. So that's the flowered path. As he's walking away, the flowers grew up behind him.
Nice. Okay. We had actually recorded something the last time I was down there, and then somebody lost it.
That might have been a woo thing, honestly. Like, it was just gone. Like, it wasn't there.
And I thought I should grab a copy from Tim. No, it'll be fine. Tim's not going to lose it.
I don't know that it was ever there, honestly. Like, I went back to the recorder and it wasn't there. So maybe I didn't hit record. It was cold, right? It was really cold.
It was like, what was it, October-ish? Was it after Albatwitch? No, it was in April. It was earlier this year.
I thought it was in February or March. Maybe, I don't know.
I think it was in April.
Okay. Because
it was the last time I successfully made it down there. And I wanted to get down before things started growing back, but didn't quite accomplish that.
Yeah.
Because you had said that, it's easier to see some of the stuff at Site 7 when there isn't a lot of foliage. And then,
yeah, I mean, you can kind of get it sometimes with leaves on the trees, but yeah, it's best to go there. Like, for me, February's been the time. I've actually never been up there. I should go up there in December. But January and February has been, pretty solid for going there.
I just pulled up one of the pictures I took that day. It was, why is it not giving me a date? Oh, May 6th.
Yeah, once April hits here, it's just things grow up so much. That's what people are like, I want to hike Toad Road. I'm like, in the middle of the summer, they'll contact me. I'm like, good luck.
Now,
it's not going to be fun.
Didn't you say they're doing something with Toad Road?
It is parts of it, at least, are now a state park. So I can go there pretty much anytime I want. I'm not it's hunting season now. So I'm, been kind of staying away during hunting season because I value my life. But once hunting season is over, I can be there pretty much as I want.
But it's not the whole road.
No, but it's most of it.
And did they made it a state park. Did they put trails or anything in there?
I mean, there was the old road is the main trail on that part of it. So that's still there. And then, I mean, there's not much, that part's kind of a strip along the creek. So there's not many more trails they could put in there. They own land on both sides of the creek. So I don't know what they're doing on the other side. They could put more trails over there. I'm not sure.
Well, I mean, do they clean up the trails? Because I know when we walked down through it, it was pretty rough.
No, I went on a hike there before in October, I think, and it was real rough. Like, that trail was really rough. They haven't done any trail maintenance.
Okay.
And I think not a lot of people know it's been turned into a state park, and the locals there are happy enough to let people think it's not, so that all the no trespassing signs and stuff are still up. But I just took a map of I printed off a map from online, put it in my dashboard, almost like a parking permit. I know I'm allowed to be here. This is state parkland.
Interesting.
So, haven't had anybody give me any guff. So
why do you think they did that?
There's a group called the Lancaster Conservancy who's doing really wonderful things, and they're buying up tons of land, and they bought it up, and I don't know why some of their stuff is just managed by the Lancaster Conservancy, but for whatever reason, they made it to, I think it's called Riverland State Park, and I'm happy for it. But they have so much land, they've saved so much in York County. It's a really wonderful organization. I absolutely love them, and I was so happy when I saw they bought it. I was like, yeah, this is incredible. This is awesome, because I've said for years, make it public. Because that way people can go there, and then half the people are there just trying to go there because they're curious, right?
Yeah.
And they'll go there. Most often you'll go there, nothing's going to happen, and people, then people come back and oh, I went there, nothing happened, or et cetera, et cetera. So open it up, let people see it. So I'm happy for it.
Well, that's kind of awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe people will have weird experiences there. Who knows?
Well, that's the other thing. Some people, I'd put money on that. Some people will. And then I'll have more stories, hopefully.
When I was coming down for Albatwitch and had to abort due to my car, one of the things I had hoped we would be able to talk about was Fatima. Because you had done those 2 episodes on Fatima. It's not anywhere near as fresh in my mind as it was back in October, but I did want to talk to you a little bit about Fatima. And I think one of the things that stood out to me, one of the things that you said at some point is that a lot of people have just turned it into just like a UFO thing.
Yeah.
And I hadn't really thought about that, because I think Vallee was the first one to suggest that this had earmarks of UFO activity,
Mm-hmm.
and that was in Dimensions, and that was kind of suggesting that this is like whatever these beings are behind the UFO phenomena are also guiding us, like with this control system.
Mm-hmm.
And he used Fatima as an example. Well, yeah, you have the moving lights in the sky, which resemble UFOs, and all this other stuff that's pushing us toward a specific sort of belief system. But since then, I didn't realize other people had just kind of thrown that into the UFO pile.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard other podcasts and stuff that basically say, oh, yeah, that was a UFO event, and just dismiss it out of hand. And I mean, it may be, but my point is, whether you want to believe the religious aspects or not, what we do, and I say we because I believe your approach is similar to mine. When we talk to witnesses, we don't tell them what they saw.
Right.
We let them tell us what they saw. And when you sit there and say, oh, no, what they really saw was UFOs, retrospectively, you're reaching back through time and telling them what they saw. And that's not at all what they reported. They reported apparitions of figures. Now, again, if you want to believe the religious message or not, that's a totally different thing. But my point is, let's believe the witnesses, and that this is what they say they saw,
And did the figure ever identify itself as Mary, or did they just put that on her?
It did not for several divisions, and I would have reviewed this myself if I didn't know we were going over it. I forget how many months of visions there were. So it was the same day of the month for many months in a row. Like, I'm not sure. I think they started in May and went to October and November, something like that. I could have that wrong, but whatever it was the same day of the month, same time of the day, every month for a series of months. And for a time, the people were suggesting, anything from they were lying to, this was a demonic manifestation. And I think finally the main seer. So there were three seers. Lucia was the main seer, and then there was Jacinta and Francesco, all young kids. Lucia could see the apparitions, hear the apparitions, and speak, have conversations with them, speak back and forth to them. Jacinta could see and hear them, but either could not or did not speak to them. It's unclear. And Francesco could only see them, so he never heard anything. So the girls would have to tell him, what the apparitions said. But at some point, Lucia asked, several months into it, she says, "Who are you?" And she said, "I am Our Lady of the Rosary," or something like this, something that indicated she was the Virgin Mary.
It's really fascinating to me that they all had different variants on this encounter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was consistent, right?
Oh, throughout all the yeah. So Francesco, with all these visions, he never heard a word. He only saw them, which is, it's so, like, why? Why is that? Other people would be around, and they would, by the time the third month rolls around, word got out, so people would be there at where they were seeing these apparitions, waiting, and other people would see like a glowing ball come and like approach the tree, but not the actual apparition of a figure. People would catch smells, like good smell. At one point, the kids were essentially kidnapped. The Portugal government at the time was very anti-Catholic, and the local official was having none of this, and he kidnapped them. He heard there were secrets. He's like, "You need to tell me the secret," and the kids refused. It's a pretty inspiring story how these kids stood up to this guy. I mean, they were little kids, and this guy's literally threatening to boil them in water and stuff. Kidnapped them, threw them in jail with adults.
Wow.
Really, really, like, must have been terrifying for these little kids. And they would not give in. And he finally gives up. He realizes, I'm not going to scare these kids. He gives up, but he kidnapped them, so they missed the apparition that month. And a couple of days later, they're in a different place, and here comes this apparition on a different tree. And they were it always appeared on the same oak tree in Lucia's father's meadow pasture where they took the sheep. They were sheep herders. But this time it appeared in a different tree. And they were very precious about the tree that was in the meadow. They never, like, they did, and other people came along and clipped branches off and stuff. But the seers themselves were like, no, they wouldn't take any. But for some reason, because it appeared in a different tree, Jacinta took a limb off of this tree. And they said it just emitted this wonderful scent of roses and flowers and stuff. And she brought it home, and her aunt was very suspicious of her and did not believe this stuff, and said, "What does that smell?" And she smelled this branch. She's just like, "Well, oak trees shouldn't smell like flowers, shouldn't smell like roses." And sometime later, she went to the pasture, and they had a vision, and while they're in ecstasy, the seers are in ecstasy, her aunt smells this smell again, and that when she hits her, it's like, oh, something else is going on here. Something, she begins to believe at that point.
Huh. Did all of the apparitions start with light?
So yes. Actually, a lot of them started with a loud boom or a blast of wind. So here's your UFO crossover stuff, right?
Yeah.
So there are absolutely crossover with UFO events. There's even down to at some point, and he doesn't describe it, but Francesco sees a big hairy monster walking around.
Really?
Yeah. He calls it a demon from hell or something like that. He calls it a creature from hell. But it's essentially he's describing just this big hairy monster. Scares the heck out of him. So, here we have, these, whether you want to call it a Bigfoot or a cryptid or whatever, just like, but a big hairy thing walking around associated with UFO stuff. We have strange lights. We have, like I said, like loud bangs, sounds, drones and sound. I believe there were sounds coming from the earth and stuff people said, all stuff we've heard with UFO reports. Very, very interesting. I like, I've stolen Brother Richard's take on, he says, whatever this stuff is, it all tends to use the same channels, so it's like you get a lot of the same phenomenon, whether it's UFOs or ghosts or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like they're using the same channels to get through. I think it's a great way to describe it. So yeah, I don't blame anyone for pointing out the similarities between the stuff and the UFO. I just said yes, but yes and what did the seers say they saw,
Well, that and a lot of people, when they say UFO, they just mean spacecraft.
Right.
They mean aliens. And I don't look at it and say, oh, this seems like aliens. I'm looking at it as this is a very big event with these things able to interact like this, whatever they are. Mm-hmm. And it could all be the same thing with different faces. It could be different things using the same methods. There's no way we would know at this point.
Right. And like, again, I'm Catholic. So for me, I'm like, I'm all in for the Catholic aspect of it, but I can remove myself from that and say, okay, maybe this is the other in the way that it does, or in the way that we speculate it does, reaching into their head and seeing what they have to play with. Right. Right. And going, okay, these are Catholic kids. They understand this symbolism. This is how I'm going to manifest to them. I can step away from my Catholicism and see that. And that is certainly a possibility, right? It's certainly a possibility. That I wouldn't blame people for saying that either, but just to write it off, it's just, oh no, they just saw a UFO. It's like, well, okay, hold on. Yeah. they saw something like a UFO, but they saw a lot of other things too. Right.
Yeah, was there stuff happening to these girls before the apparitions?
Lucia saw an apparition of an angel before they saw the multiple times, I think 3 times before the apparition of the Virgin Mary. And then the last time, all 3 seers saw the angel. And it was sort of like, basically preparing them like, something bigger is coming kind of thing. And then after that, they saw, but she had seen the angel once and didn't know what it was. So she thought it was a ghost. And then when she saw it again, she realized, like, it was like a year later or something. And when she saw it again and then finally got confirmation whenever it spoke to them and realized what it was, then she knew, like, oh, that's what I saw before.
Oh, yeah, there was a lot of details and you did a 2-part podcast on this.
Mm-hmm.
Was it just 2? It was just 2, right?
Yeah, it's just 2, but it was a deep dive for sure.
Way more than I've ever known about Fatima, because generally Fatima is taken either as, here are the basics, or, like I said, Vallee pointed out the connections between this and other anomalous phenomena. Because I don't think, at that point, I don't think Vallee was looking at this as aliens.
And if you just cover, like, so the big event is the last one, is the miracle of the sun, they call it, or the dancing sun. That's when it was like 70,000 people were there.
That's insane.
And by far, most of them saw it. Now, there were Jewish people there were atheists there were scientists. Now, they didn't see the apparition of the Virgin Mary, but they saw weird things in the sky. And they saw the sky change colors and all this stuff. So we have a mass event there, and if you just talk about that event, it sounds very UFO-like. There's a thing in the sky kind of dancing around. They literally said it looked like a spinning disc. The sun turned into this spinning disc.
But the sun was still in the sky too, right? Or am I wrong about that?
Whatever they saw seemed to turn into the sun after it was dancing around.
Okay.
Now, whether this just kind of placed itself in that position, and so it was a very cloudy, rainy day, and then the clouds kind of parted, and then this thing sort of, did its little dance, did the falling leaf motion.
Right.
Associated with UFOs. It totally did that.
And poltergeist events.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, people were wet from the rain, and when this ended, they were all dry, right?
They were all dry. Yeah. Yeah.
And that definitely falls into this flat out high strangeness type of a thing.
Yeah, it's a very strange event. Again, remove the religion from it if you want. I'm not trying to convert anybody. But it's a very strange thing that many, many, many people witnessed. Like a lot of people witnessed this. You can read in the newspapers at the time. People, newspaper reporters went there expecting this is how we finally get to because they were promising, the seers were promising, there's going to be a miracle on this day. This is the big one that the apparitions promised. So they were ready for we're going to get them now because, we'll know they're lying because this miracle won't happen. And then, bam. This massive thing happens for this huge crowd of people. I mean, that's the size of a Super Bowl audience. It's a massive amount of people.
Did anyone see nothing?
There were a couple people who claimed that they didn't see anything. The vast majority of the audience saw some phenomena. Now, not all of them reported the same thing, but there were a few people who said, no, I didn't see anything. But there were people from other villages who could see this going on from afar.
Really?
So the idea of a mass hypnosis event is kind of eliminated with that because there were people, farmers in other villages who had no interest in going there, could actually see this event happening from afar.
Huh. I think too, a lot of people want to dismiss it because it has religious overtones.
Mm-hmm. I understand.
Yeah, it's like, that's just nonsense because, I don't believe in, Mary.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't have to acknowledge something strange happened.
Right, exactly, and that's what I was. So when I did the show, I actually felt like everything the apparition said, I quoted, and a lot of it's very religious, very very Catholic in nature. But my point was, no matter what entity showed themselves in a case like this, if this was a gray alien stepped out of a UFO or whatever, and actually said something to people, I would quote that too, because that's really important. If these entities, whatever they are, saying things, I want to quote them,
right.
Exactly. So, for me, it's a wonderful, sort of event confirming, some of my beliefs, and I've felt very close to Mary for many years. But I totally understand if it's that's not your path. That's fine. I'm not, like I said, I'm really not trying to convert anybody. I'm just let's listen to what the witnesses said,
sure,
and what they described.
And what about the prophecies that they left? Did they ever reveal the third one?
Yeah, they did. There's a lot of conspiracies around it because I think people were hoping for it to be this big, here's the date of the end of the world or whatever,
Let's hope they give us the date the world ends. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
It already ended in 2012. It's fine.
Yeah, we're done. You threw me off there.
Sorry.
No. It's the secrets were, relevant. Well, they predicted World War II. It predicted the death of two of the seers, not exactly by the date, but it basically said they were going to die young, and they died from the Spanish flu within a few years of the apparitions. It predicted World War II, and then there's a lot of stuff as regards to the church and communism and stuff, and the third secret was basically, for the conversion of the world or something like this. And like Russia had to be consecrated to Mary or something, or, bad things would happen. And then there's an argument whether Pope John Paul II, I think, consecrated the whole world to Mary. And there's an argument over whether that counts or not. So the secrets they're interesting, I think, for Catholics, but for non-Catholics, I think they're kind of disappointing.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And why Mary?
That's a good question. Why Mary and why children? I mean, these apparitions happen for, way back into the 1800s and before. But, starting in the 1800s, she seems to appear to poor children most often girls, in little rural places, not cities most often. There are some exceptions to all these. So it's why Marian, why children? I mean, the Catholic answer is that, she's our mother and she cares about us and she's coming to try to help us. But if you want to remove that, why?
Now, this Mary is mother of Jesus, Mary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Right. Not the Mary that was potentially his consort.
Not Mary Magdalene. No.
Okay. I am not that well versed in this stuff anymore.
Yeah. This is Mary, Jesus' mother. Mary,
okay. Yes. Why does she hold such a special place in the Catholic Church?
Because she said, boy, this is you're testing my apologetics here. Because she said yes to the Holy Spirit. She was given the option, to bear this child or not, and she said yes, and bore God in the form of man, as we believe. It's a very, very important thing. In order to do this, we believe that she was conceived without original sin. She had to be if she was going to bear God. So she has this very special place in being, the first human born since Adam and Eve to be conceived without original sin. She holds a very, very special place as an intercessor in the Catholic Church, as the sort of the go-between. In simple terms, always say, like, if you had a really good friend and you knew his mom and your friend. You wanted to ask your friend a favor. Sometimes you might go to his mom and say, "Hey, I was wondering, could you ask Joe if he could help me?"
And this, I mean, we don't have anything in modern day, I think, that approaches the level of how big this event was.
Not with the mass sightings.
Yeah.
There's an event in Spain in the 1960s that it's a super high concentration of paranormal phenomena around some seers and a similar apparition. This is not approved by the Catholic Church. It's a Garabandal. It's a town in Spain, and I'm going to do a show on it. The concentration of paranormal events, including UFOs, around this stuff is amazing, and the amount of kind of boxes you can check with the phenomenon that's happening around these seers is amazing to me. I've said, it makes West Virginia during the Mothman years look like nothing, like what was happening there.
Okay. And that was also a Mary apparition?
Yeah. They saw it's very similar. The messages were very similar, but there was no mass sightings with this one.
And did it just stop after that big event?
Yeah, that was the last one for Fatima. I believe Lucia had a couple more apparitions in her lifetime that just appeared to her. But yeah, that was the last one at Fatima. And then, there's been, like I said, there's been a couple. Well, there's been more than a couple. There's been a lot of people who've claimed to see apparitions of Mary since then. But that was the last one at Fatima, the Miracle of the Sun. That was the big one.
Okay. There was also, when I was talking to Greg Little, I don't think I got to it when I interviewed him, but in his and Andrew's latest book, they're talking about apparitions at Zeitoun in Egypt.
Yeah, we're doing that. I think that'll be the next apparition show we do. We're going to do, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it either. But we'll be doing that one, and Knock, Ireland, I think is our second apparition show, and then after that, hopefully Garabandal. But yeah, that one was, if it's the one I'm thinking of, that was at a Coptic church.
Yes.
So it wasn't at a Catholic church, and they were really open about inviting anybody there to try to debunk it. It kept appearing multiple times on top of the church, and they were very much like, yeah, come debunk it, please, tell us what it is. And, Muslims were seeing it and Christians and everything else, mass sightings of it. So, yeah, that's a really interesting one. And I think that'll be on the next apparition show whenever we get to that. Probably not to the new year.
I'm looking it up how to pronounce it. And it's just, I want you to tell me. It's not saying anything. Little speaker thing.
I was just going to wait till Brother Richard pronounced it.
Let's see. What about this one?
And shortly after.
No. Oh, wait, maybe he's going to say where it is.
Egypt sightings
Zeitoun.
That sounds right. Yeah. We'll go with that. Zeitoun. Now we know.
So, but he's talking about this too. So, what's his name? He did all the research. Devereaux. Devereaux and some other guy went looking, and they found that each time these apparitions happened, there was an earthquake within 200 miles of the area.
That's super interesting.
Yeah, and I had wanted to talk more to Greg about it, but we just didn't have time. And but yeah, like, so there was something that, the speculation is somehow this was partially where the energy was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, that stuff was caught on video. There's actual video of those apparitions.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
There's pictures, there's video, the whole 9 yards, which is not something you had from Fatima just because of the time period.
Yeah, there's one, like, black and white photo of the sun, but you can't tell anything. It's just a cruddy amateur photo, I think,
Right.
Yeah.
And that was what, the 19...
It was during World War One. So
yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
19-something, 14 or something.
Yeah. I wanted to say
97.
19 teens, but that wasn't a word.
Yeah.
But yeah, the ones in Egypt, I'm reading through the small little segment he had in his book, and I had never even heard of them, and they were utterly fascinating. And he said that some people would see figures and that they resembled Mary and such, and other people would just see lights, and so the same type of thing where people were seeing different things when they looked at it, which
Mhm.
makes you wonder how much of that is sort of a null thing that our brain needs to put format on.
Right. Well, it's like I think, we were talking about Bigfoot one time, and you said like maybe it's just, something that's there, and you put the costume of Bigfoot on it, so to
Right.
speak, and then somebody else might put another costume on it, Yeah, it's quite possible. Like I said, the culture definitely matters with this stuff.
Yes. My other question was going to be with Fatima. Was there anything during this time period? I mean, it was World War I, but that was particularly stressing out that area of that country.
Well, like I said, it was a very anti-Catholic government, and like Portugal had been like extremely Catholic for many, many years, and then right before World War I, this kind of anti-Catholic government takes over. So that was definitely happening. World War I was happening. I think Portugal tried to stay out of it, but Germany declared war on them eventually. So they had to kind of enter it because they were going to be a part of it whether they liked it or not.
Right.
So that was happening. Some people from the village, some young men from the village. This is a farming village. If you take young men off to war, it's going to hurt. The village.
Yeah.
So they were certainly going through that. But otherwise, I'm not sure. It's usually framed. The apparitions are basically framed as like, it's weird. It's almost dated when you read about how like anti-communist they are, these apparitions, and then it's today looking back, it's like is communism that big a threat? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it is anymore. Like, seems like I wouldn't call Russia communist anymore. So is communism this big threat that it was? I don't know. So it's like what were these apparitions trying to say? It's the Garabandal, the one that I'm absolutely fascinated with. They made some big predictions regarding that. Some things that are supposed to happen. There's supposed to be a warning, and then a miracle, and then a chastisement. And the warning, at least, if not the warning and the miracle, are supposed to happen within the life of one of the seers. She's in her 70s now. So what happens if it doesn't happen? In her life, she's supposed to tell us a week before the warnings happen.
I was going to say, how would we know?
Yeah. Well, supposedly everybody, according to what she says, everybody in the world will know. It won't be a kind of thing. Now, she said, like, if you don't believe, you're not going to do anything with it. But everybody will know. So what does that mean? I have no clue. But she's supposed to announce it a week before it happens. If she dies before that happens, that raises a lot of questions.
It is so reminiscent, though, of like contactee stories of
it is
abduction story of all this different stuff. Stuff you get in seances and stuff. It's as Keel pointed out, it seems like it's different devices used to tune into the same wavelength.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, I cannot argue that for a second. The only thing I can point to is like there are. And this is like for both sides of it, right? So like I said, the Catholic Church, as far as Garabandal, for years, they not only would they not approve it, they were banning priests from going there. They were kind of like anti-Garabandal. Now it's changed over time. They've relaxed that, but now it's a wait and see thing. And so if these predictions never happen, they're never going to approve it.
Right,
but at the same time, people have claimed to have had miraculous healings there. I've had a pretty amazing thing. I had So that apparition, they were holding up, holy metals and stuff for it to kiss, and then distributing these around. And there were some pretty amazing things happen. So the people would bring tons of these things like crucifixes and holy metals and wedding rings and all kinds of stuff. They pile them on a table. And these seers would go into ecstasy. They'd walk over to the table. They'd pick something up out of the pile. First of all, they said sometimes they would pick up tangles of rosaries. They'd hold them up to the apparition to kiss. They would come right untangled, and they would walk to these people. Now they're in trance. They'd walk to these people and return them, and they never failed to return the right one to the right person. Not once. Now there were piles of these things. First of all, even if they saw who put them there, there's no way they could memorize them all.
Right.
Second of all, they weren't there. They weren't there. These tables would be, people would be putting stuff on the tables before the seers ever got there. Really, really interesting stuff. But in any case, I got one of these medals that had been kissed, and the person sent it to me, and I opened up the package, and Allison's in the kitchen. We have a big kitchen. You've been there. Pretty big room.
Yeah.
I'm on one side and the front door. She's doing dishes on the other side of the kitchen. I open up the package immediately. When I open up, Allison says, "Ooh, roses." The whole room filled up with the scent of roses. And so it just completely took me back. I was like, wow, that is pretty amazing. That is pretty amazing. So that was one of the medals that the apparition, supposedly kissed in Garabandal. So I've had this, what I feel is this kind of pretty stunning, amazing experience. So what happens if the Catholic Church doesn't approve Garabandal? I don't know. I only know that something cool happened for me with it. And
do you need their approval?
Right, exactly. I don't. I will treasure that no matter what. Right. And I believe their approval just means like, hey, this is good teaching that the church agrees with. If they don't approve it, it doesn't mean like you're not allowed to believe it or it's bad or anything else. You know what I mean? So it's the word approval carries some baggage with it. I think that isn't, doesn't necessarily mean bad if it's not approved.
Yeah. I mean, every once in a while I struggle with the whole concept of authority. Like,
of course,
it's like we're born into a system where certain people have authority over us, and we're told not to really question that. But and sometimes you need someone to have authority. I mean, that's an important part of our system, but how they get the authority isn't always,
Yeah, no, yeah, I completely understand. I mean, I came up through punk rock and
Right.
anarchy and stuff. I completely understand that. Absolutely, it's that inclination towards question that, and it's not even a defense. The only thing I could say is like, when things are questioned, the answer is consistent, at least. I mean, if I have a question and, I consider Brother Richard to be basically my spiritual advisor. So I will go to him and if I can ask them the same question 10 times and the answer is the same. And to me, that's valuable. It's not like, maybe, but only if this and then that, what I mean?
Right.
There's not, but I absolutely understand it. And people just like, I just can't deal with that. With the dogma, I actually completely understand that.
Well,
it's a process for me, let me tell you, to like this sort of submission to authority. It's something I have to deal with within myself.
It's not just that. It's also like with science and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, this person's an expert. You have to listen to what they say. And it's like, so we're not allowed to question it,
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, but this quote expert says the opposite thing.
Right. And I have a real problem with gurus in general. I don't like the concept of a guru.
No.
One of my favorite documentary movies is Kumare. Have you ever seen it?
I don't think so.
It's really worth watching. It's a wonderful movie about a guy who's, he's of Indian descent, and he's looking around America. He's like, people are obsessed with like yoga and all this like Eastern religion stuff. He doesn't have an accent, but he puts on an accent, and he grows his beard out and grows his hair long, and presents himself as this yogi. And at first it sounds like it's going to, well, I think they started out the movie trying to do kind of a Borat thing where they were just going to make fun of people.
Mm-hmm.
But he gathers these people about him, and very quickly he realizes like, oh, I have followers and I have responsibility. And his whole teaching the whole time is, you don't need me. You don't need a guru. You don't need me. And at the end, he presents himself. He shaves his beard and cuts his hair, and he comes walking out and he presents himself. And most of his students got it. It's quite beautiful. most of them start laughing and run up and hug him. And he says, I told you, you don't need a guru. I'm nobody. I'm nobody. I told you. And he, basically reveals that he was faking the whole time. But the ones that had problem with it were yoga teachers who were invested in having the Kumare style being taught from this, this teacher from India. And they were very, very invested in, this being part of this legacy and stuff, because they basically wanted authority from his authority, right?
Yeah,
So and they have, but it's a really beautiful movie in the end because the right people in the movie get it. There's people who really get it, and it's the right people that get the message, and it ends up being this very, very heartfelt movie. But it's really a lesson in gurus. And I was mentioning, talking about it with Brother Richard, and he said, there's no gurus here. He's like, we're all walking on this path, and we're just trying to help each other. And I really like that approach. Now, I don't know if that's just the Franciscans or across the board, but I liked that answer because I do have I have an issue with gurus. I do. I'm like, don't like that.
There's a C.S. Lewis quote. Is this it? Nope. Hang on. That I've always really liked, and it kind of talks to that. Maybe this is, yeah. So this comes out of his book Miracles. This is a society where the simple many obey the few seers can live. A society where all are seers could live even more fully, but a society where the mass is still simple and the seers are no longer attended to can achieve only superficiality, baseness, ugliness, and in the end, extinction. On or back we must go, but to stay here is death.
Huh.
And I like, the idea of everyone being a seer, everyone being able to kind of look inside and find their own path, not having to go to somebody else and try to emulate their path.
Yeah. And I've said that. I mean, so Stone Breath has an album called Children of Hum, and that comes from a phrase Preblin, my bandmate, said one time. So we have very similar paths. We grew up Catholic. We kind of stepped away to the whole pagan thing, and then we kind of came back around to Catholicism. And his wife asked him one time, she said, what do you, how do you do all this? What is your, what are you doing? And he turned to her and he said, some things hum, some things don't hum. I follow the things that hum. And it made so much sense to me. I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. What a beautiful way to put it. And to that I add, what hums for me may not hum for you. And that's okay. Yes. You have to follow your hum and I have to follow my hum. I'm never going to tell somebody they're going to go to hell or anything like that. Right. It's not my way. But this hums for me. So this is the hum I am following, and I completely understand if it doesn't hum for me. I absolutely understand that. So that's all. I just sort of I like that aspect, and I think we should all follow our own hum, right?
Yeah, and sometimes you need people to kind of get you there, but in the end, you shouldn't be, trying to be someone else.
Right.
Because we all do have very different paths. And what made you decide to go back to being Catholic?
Well, it was many things, including that Garabandal medal that came that were pushing me there. I mean, there's some things that I would love to tell the story of, but they concern my family that I feel were absolutely miracles that happened to me long ago, like 20 years ago, that I never really sort of addressed. And Mary has been a presence in my life one way or another since that time, probably before, I just didn't realize it. But I wanted to, when I was sort of dipping my toe back into Christianity, I thought I wanted to be into Mary Magdalene, right? Because I thought she's more rebellious. She's the one that is kind of associated with some kind of deeper mystery schools, and she's portrayed as a wild woman. And when she moves in France, she grows hair over her body and stuff, very, really interesting. So I was like, but it's the Virgin Mary just kept presenting to me in really wonderful situations in wonderful ways. And after a while, it was just a number of these things happen. And after a while, it's I can't ignore this anymore. I can't. I'm not being authentic to myself if I keep ignoring this.
And I don't think we get to choose what entities we interact with.
Yeah, I was raised this way. If somebody said, dude, this is just, the other presenting through the culture that I'm not going to argue. I'm okay. At some point I got peace with it. I said, if you want to tell me Mary's a goddess, okay. If you want to tell me Mary was a real person and nothing more, okay. If you want to tell me she's the mother of God, okay.
Maybe she's a tulpa.
It doesn't matter. The only thing I know is it works for me.
Right. Yes, and that's the key right there. Like, it doesn't matter what these things are; they have an effect on us.
Mm-hmm.
So you can define it how you want. You can put it in whatever box you want. You can try and explain it away, but the effect is the real thing.
Yeah, I can intellectualize it, but it's not. It doesn't get me very far. You know what I mean? It's better to just sort of step back and enjoy the mystery, honestly.
And actually, that was one of the things we had talked about that night was the kind of encouraging good experiences instead of scary ones.
Yeah.
You know, it seems like, I mean, okay, so the average public who aren't really deep into this stuff, they just want to hear scary stories.
Right.
You know, but the truth is, I think a lot of this stuff wouldn't actually be scary if we weren't, if it wasn't challenging us, if we were more aware of how this stuff works, if that makes sense.
It makes total sense. It makes total sense. And I mean, my experience has been absolutely that. And I mean, sometimes it does get scary. Right? I'm out at these places at night, weird stuff's going on. So yeah, sometimes I get scared. It gets scary. But there's a difference when you bring fear to it, right?
Yes, yeah.
If you bring fear to it, if you go out there thinking from the start, I'm scared, this is bad, I'm scared, this is a scary situation. If you're there and something happens and things get creepy or scary, that's another thing, I think. But yeah, if you go out there like bringing that to it, I think you're going to get a measure of that back.
I mean, I've been in those experiences where I feel that oppressive air, like something doesn't want you there. And my response from early on, it was almost like I felt like, okay, you're teaching me how to overcome fear. So I'm just going to sit here. I'm going to wait for that to dissipate. And eventually it would. I mean, I went through months of any time I walked outside, something followed me.
Oh, I remember you telling me that. Yeah.
And there was no sound, almost Oz effect like. And something would walk right behind me. And it would only happen at night. And it only would happen if I was alone. If I was with other people, everything was normal. I'd go into my house, they'd leave, I'd go back outside, dead quiet. And it freaked me out. And eventually I just sat down and went, okay, if you're going to do something or stop.
Right.
And I sat there about 10, 15 minutes and suddenly all the noise just kind of whooshed back in and it never happened again.
We were doing, ghost box sessions, SD sessions, and we were getting some pretty scary stuff every now and then. Like, get out, you're gonna pay tonight, messages like that. And I was getting a little bit freaked out. And I mentioned it to Brother Richard, and he's like, don't get freaked out. Ask it why. He said, ask it why it wants you to leave. Don't leave. Ask it why it wants you to leave. And I was like, and ever since then, it's like completely, like just that little thing just kind of changed my perspective. And now we did one recently in POW camp ex-POW camp in Michelle. Ruins of a POW camp. I forget what the message was, but it was something intimidating or something that came through. And that was my approach. I was like no, like why, why? Give me a reason, It's pretty neat. So like just the perspective changes where it goes from like, oh, it's, it told me to get out to like, well, no, wait, let's shift the perspective and say, well, why do you want me to leave? And that's, that's all it took. And it's really kind of changed the way I react to when those things come through now as well.
And what response did you get?
Nothing. When once I challenged it back, nothing came back, right? So was it just? First of all, it's a ghost box, right? So who knows, right? I have theories as to how they may work, which we probably could get into when you might be interested in that for your book about time. But I don't know that's how they work. I don't know if they work. I only know like we seem to get, sometimes you get nonsense answers and I think, that's nothing, nothing's happening. This is coincidence stuff. But sometimes you seem to get very pointed answers to the questions. And at that point I think like, okay, something's going on here. Now people have said, oh, that's just you affecting the ghost box. Fine. That's still cool to me. Like I still think this is super interesting if that's happening. But so this last time when I think it said, because there was this really creepy basement, and it said like, I think it was to the right of us. So it said to the right, and I said, okay, I'm looking to the right. It said, come down like that, and I was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And it said something else, something a little more demanding or something. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Tell me why or something like that. But there was no real, response as to why. Maybe it was just trying to get a rise out of you, which I think a lot of this stuff is.
Well, maybe because that generates energy.
Right. Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
whatever it is, it might even be mindless. It's just, it knows that this doing this thing generates more energy from you, then it has more energy to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Or it's trying to draw you in one way or another. And let me try this,
there's the Civil War graveyard in the Ithaca graveyard. There's a little Civil War section. And that's where sometimes you would get that oppressive feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, if I was working with someone trying to teach them how to deal with this stuff, I would say, walk through there when that oppressive feeling is there. Like, I'm standing right here. You're not in any danger. There's nothing dangerous here. Nothing's going to hurt you. But, oh, my God, is that feeling strong that you need to leave?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm like, just walk up and around. And my girlfriend at the time, when I was teaching her this, she did that the first time, and she got to the end. And I was a little concerned because she was almost like in trance. And I'm like, and how do you feel? She goes, exhilarated.
Oh, wow.
Because she was able to combat that fear and just do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. I mean, that's one of, the point of the fear might be to overcome it, to fix
it. Might be.
To fix that challenge, because a lot of this stuff starts out scary. Strieber's initial UFO encounters were definitely not pleasant.
Right.
But then as they progress, and that's the same thing you get with shamanic experiences. Those aren't pleasant, happy experiences. They're tearing you down.
Mm-hmm.
Or I think the phrase is taking your body apart. So, so I mean, and when you go into this stuff with fear, or if you're stressed out and angry and stuff, and then stuff starts happening around your house, it might be an entity. It might be you unconsciously, but the point is it's drawing that energy from angry energy and fearful energy. And so that's what it's going to manifest.
Right. Right. And the flip side of that is I think, like, we usually have if we're at Site 7, I always say, like, it's usually everyone agrees when it's time to go. It's not like a thing where, like, somebody's like, no, I want to stay. Usually everybody's like, nah, I think it's time to go. I think pay attention to those impulses too. It's not running away. It's not like we're leaving because we're scared. It's just like everybody's like, no, I think we're done.
Yes, that's the exact thing. It's a feeling of, oh, we're done. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you could stay, and I don't think it would matter. It's just whatever was going on is done.
Yeah.
You're just standing there from that point on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Let's take a quick break, and we will be right back. Check out wheredidtheroadgo.com. You will find an archive of every show, right back to the very first one that aired January 26, 2013. There's links to all of our social media, Discord, Facebook, the Facebook group, Twitter, YouTube. You can pick up merch at our store that is linked on the page. You can become a Patreon and get extra content every month for as little as $3 a month. You can leave a donation, go through blog entries, and you can contact us if you have stories you'd like to share for a future listener stories episode. Stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com is the place to send them. For general contact, it's contact@wheredidtheroadgo.com. And if you want to mail me something, you can do so at P.O. Box 444, Ovid, New York, 14521. I'd like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons, because without you, this show would not be what it is. And I want to give a special shout out to those of you pledging $10 or more: Allison Cook, Super Inframan, 36 Dingo, Chuck Shutters, Leanne Cherry, CJ, Tim, Andrew Nichols, Matthew Sproul, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Lemona, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Christopher Ernst, Craig Cicernos, Billuminati, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., Empty K., Eric Todd, J., James Lattimore, James Lindsay, Jim Pyre, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, MJ Armstrong, Jim and Sophie, Mark Brady, Matt in Delaware, Oli Andre Olar, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Philosopher of Mirrors, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Sam Sharon, Stacy Sherwood, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Verosh K., Vincent Trewill, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Stephen D., Amber Hall, and Craig Sagastumi. I thank all of you for the incredible support. So I'm here with Mr. Timothy Renner of Strange Familiars and now the Flowered Path podcast as well.
Yeah.
And I do want to hear, well, okay, so there were a couple things I wanted to talk to you about. If you're able to stick around for a Patreon episode, we can do there. Yeah,
sure.
Let's do this one. This was one of the things we talked about last time I came out to see you, and that is the concept of proof and why people care about what the experts think about this stuff. So you find so often, and I think especially like the current UFO Twitter type of people are all like, oh, look at this, look at this, look at this. But in the end, it's not proof of anything.
Right.
Like we know from, if you intellectually honestly look at this stuff, you will realize that there is weird stuff going on. But is there ever going to be a case where a picture or a video proves what that thing is?
I don't think so.
You have that great picture on the back of your first book, and you put it on there, and that was one of the things I liked so much about the way you approach the stuff, is you're like, I don't know what this is, it's weird, here's the picture.
Yeah, I wasn't going to put it on, but I had enough friends who were like, no, put that on there, that's a weird thing, that should go on there. Even Allison, ever skeptic, at that time way more skeptical than she is now, was put that on there, that's weird.
And I think the appeal to experts is still that authority thing.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, we got to get, the scientists to believe us. Why? You know, especially when you can't, okay, so like psi and stuff like that, you can do minor studies in the lab. You can put monks on EKG machines and have them go into trance. This stuff you can scientifically approach, but how do you scientifically approach Bigfoot without Bigfoot?
Yeah, you can't repeat that in a lab.
Same with genuine UFO sightings. I mean, it's so hard to tell what's a genuine UFO sighting anymore because there's so much tech out there. But, you're never going to convince the people who don't believe to believe in this stuff by showing them a blurry picture or, any of this stuff.
Exactly.
And the better question is, why does anyone care? To me, this stuff is personal. And I don't think that people see that when they don't have the experience, when they're looking at it as a singular event, rather than looking at it as something that affects their whole life.
Yeah, I did a show recently, a patron show for Strange Familiars, where we talked about dreams, Bigfoot dreams, what I considered big dreams, right? That happen to have Bigfoot in them. And I was talking about how, like, in the beginning of the podcast, I didn't want to talk about that. And it wasn't because I was never as flesh and blood as I think you think I was, retrospectively. I think, like, even in my first book, I said, I know I lean that way for sure. But even in my first book, I said, there's something weird about this stuff. But in any case, I was concerned about the reality of it, not so much the flesh and blood reality, but the reality in as much as I wanted people to believe that people were having these experiences.
Yeah.
And I thought if we start talking about dreams, people are going to go, oh, it's all dreams. You're just saying it's all dreams. So I really kind of stayed away from it for a long time. Now I think they're a very important part of it, if not the key to it. Like I was telling somebody today, if I ever write, a 3-volume universal theory of the paranormal, a la Josh's Ecology of Souls, mine's going to be about dreams, not death, because I think they're that important as regards all this. Not that death isn't important. I'm not trying to say, Josh is wrong. Or this. It's absolutely important, and it's a fantastic study. A side note, between the two of us, between the two authors of Where the Footprints End, which one would you have bet money on writing a 3-volume series about death?
That's fair point.
Yeah, I gossed out Josh.
Now, on the other hand, Josh feels that dreams aren't really important at all.
Really?
Yeah, he in particular, he doesn't want to hear about people's dreams. Yeah, he said that one night on the air, and I was like, hey, I do, because to me, dreams are super important.
No, I mean, I think I'm guilty of having said that in the past. Absolutely. I know I've said that in the past, and I'm sorry if I ever said that to someone, because I was wrong. I really do believe I'm wrong. And I think dreams are a huge part of this. I think that's why we fall asleep, right?
Yeah.
Wake up and people talk about, I woke up, Bigfoot was staring in the window, and I just turned over and went back to sleep. Why is that?
Right.
Because it's easier to get to in your dreams than it is when you're awake, right? Like it's easier for the other to reach you when you're out than it is when you're awake.
When you're sleeping, it's an altered state of consciousness. And it is a direct connection to your deeper self.
Mm-hmm.
So, and if this stuff can communicate in a similar manner, or if it communicates through our deeper self in some way, or is a part of our deeper self in some way, then that makes absolute sense.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we did. I think you were involved with the sleep paralysis stuff we did, right? With the 3 or 4 part series.
I mean, I've certainly told my sleep paralysis stories on Where Did the Road Go before, but I don't know if I was.
Okay, I thought maybe you were. I know Josh was involved. I thought maybe you were as well.
I could have been.
We started just doing we did a show on The Nightmare, which was a sort of pseudo documentary on sleep paralysis.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And there was a lot, and people just started piling in sleep paralysis stories, and some of them are very, very strange.
Yes.
Yes. And it seems like it can spread. Like people who don't have sleep paralysis will, get involved with someone who does have sleep paralysis, and the next thing they know, they're having sleep paralysis. Or I
think in the way that we talk about big dreams and little dreams, the big dreams are meaningful. The little dreams are just processing the day's stuff. Yeah. I think there's big and little sleep paralysis, honestly.
Yes, absolutely. Because I think scientists have it right sometimes. It's just, part of our brain not fully waking up, and we don't have control, but it's sort of conscious, and you still have the dream imagery, and then it gets scary because you're like, what the hell's going on?
Right. But being paralyzed itself is scary.
Yes, yeah. But then when you have it like connected to other things, or you have two people sharing sleep paralysis, there's something more going on there.
Yeah. Or when people wake up and, excuse me, something, was sitting on their bed and they wake up and there's an impression on their pillow or something still after they wake up, Yeah. I mean, there's definitely something to sleep paralysis. I mean, it's connected to this in some way. There's too many witnesses I have on the show. It's one of the standard questions I ask. Ever have sleep paralysis? Oh yeah. Like a huge percentage of them. Now, someone else told me like, oh, well, a huge percentage of people in general have sleep paralysis, so you can't make anything of that. But I don't know. It seems to be like a massive amount of paranormal witnesses also have sleep paralysis.
It's unusual for a paranormal witness not to have sleep paralysis.
Right. Exactly. Yes.
And sometimes stuff happens, you just don't even know where to put it. Like I had woken up the other day, and I'm laying there trying to get back to sleep. I'm not asleep. And in one ear, just like my right ear, I basically hear a Wilhelm scream.
Oh, okay.
And like it startled me. And then I went, that was probably just in my head. I have no idea why it was in my head. But like, did something do something that my brain just interpreted as a Wilhelm scream? Was it just that I'm trying to get to sleep? Like why? Because it was almost comical. It sounded like somebody falling down. And they just yelled. And I was like, and it startled me because I was like, what? Okay, that wasn't real. But we don't have control over that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's just a sort of like brain hallucination because it's, trying to go between states, or if it's something I interacted with, because I think something else happened after that, and I don't remember what it was, but none of it was like something where I'd say, oh, this was really weird, as much as just like, why, Now, when I got woken up with a scream and a bang, or a shriek and a bang, and the dog started barking at something, it was like, okay, that's weird.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like that almost seems like the dog heard it.
Mm-hmm.
But dreams have always been such an important part of my life, and there are people who don't remember any of their dreams.
I know. Yeah, yeah. Now I go through fits and starts where there'll be just months where I'll either remember snippets or very little. And then I'll have times where, I remember a good bit. It's definitely better if I'm actually actively recording them.
Yes.
Which I'm not great about. I should be better about that. But because it's definitely interesting. Dream journals. Like I was reading back when I was doing that show with Octavian for the Strange Familiars patrons. I was reading back through my dream journal. I was like, oh man, there's some really cool stuff in here.
I know, right?
Completely forgotten.
And sometimes it's cool concepts. Like I've turned stuff into stories that came from dreams, because it's like, wow, that's almost a story right there.
Yeah.
And I've posted some of them, and it's just, I don't know, because it didn't come out of me.
Right. Yeah.
But yet it kind of did.
Mm-hmm.
And the number of prophetic dreams I've had, or dreams that aren't even prophetic, but that I'm given specific information in, I don't know what that is. I don't know where that's coming from. It seems like something else giving me the information, but again, it's hard to tell where self stops, if self stops.
Yeah, there's a deep iceberg, right?
But like when
subconscious.
it's a little thing, it's kind of like, oh, I dreamed about this yesterday and now it happened today, but it's not consequential to anything.
Right. Well, yeah, I've talked to so many people like that, though. So many people who have had like dreams like that. They're like, they get this intense deja vu, and then, nothing of consequence happened. Chad has one of the coolest stories of it. He was telling me. He said he was driving with his cousin when they were just driving down the road in the car. And Chad said he just got this overwhelming feeling of familiarity. And he's like, we've been here before. We've done this before. And he said, I need to stop right now. And he jammed on his brakes, like just, this hard stop. And he said, right as he did that, an owl flew across the front of his car and up the windshield. Like didn't hit it, but just glided like right across the front of the car and up the windshield and away. So that's all it was. That's all that happened. But he said it was this absolute moment of deja vu. Like, and I was like, oh, that is a cool story.
But not only that, but it probably had a deeper effect on him.
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Yeah.
And how would your theory of dreams connecting everything in the paranormal go?
I don't know. I haven't thought it out that far yet. But I know. I mean, so I know. This is like Bigfoot. People have Bigfoot dreams,
right?
Lots of people have alien and UFO dreams. I've had both. I've dreamed of ghosts. So it just feels like it's all a part of it, how it's tied in. But yeah, I haven't like sat down to make the connection. It's just one of those deep feelings that I have. Like, no, this is part of it. This is part of it. But I haven't, thought out what that path would look like or what that book would look like at all.
Okay. Yeah, but they are, and in our culture, dreams are just tossed out. They don't mean anything. They're nonsense.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think there are most traditional native cultures and stuff understand that dreams are important, and some of them, I think it's the Aboriginals. Don't they think that this is more the unreal than dreams are?
I've heard that. Yeah.
I mean, this is sort of consensual reality. We're all sharing this one.
Right.
And I mean, and you can share dreams with people too. That's the other thing.
Yes, those are fascinating. That was what was that book? I had the author on it. It's called Nightmare Land or something.
Ooh.
He had a bunch of stories about people sharing dreams. Really interesting. Really interesting.
I am not familiar with that.
Yes, he does something with Coast to Coast, but he wrote a book. I think it's called Nightmare Land.
Okay.
Good book.
Was it all bad dreams?
No. It was everything from it was just all like weird dream stuff, like lucid dreaming stuff, sleep paralysis stuff, but like shared dreams and just, like the whole dream kind of thing, like he covered like everything. So yeah, it wasn't all bad dreams, but it was, I think, that was the hook, calling the book Nightmare Land.
Gotcha. It's also interesting how quickly dreams can fade.
Oh yeah.
And that's fascinating to me because sure, we can forget anything, but like dreams in particular are clearly happening in a state of mind that is not fully compatible with our waking state.
Right.
So like we wake up and we're like, and sometimes we don't remember anything. Or you remember you were having a cool dream, but you have no idea what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that's frustrating.
Oh, absolutely.
Or you go, oh man, I was having this cool dream and I can't remember it. And then you remember it and go, oh, that wasn't really cool. That was kind of boring. But I think it's saying about the dream state, whatever the dream state is.
Yeah.
There's and again with our materialistic view on this stuff, it's like, oh well, we can do an EKG and see what happens when you dream, and that explains it, except it doesn't.
Yeah, it tells you what your physical body's doing, but
yeah, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. They are something I think more people should pay attention to.
Yeah,
and definitely record.
So when we did a show a while back on the whole airship flap at the end of the 1800s. And there was one of these guys, these entities, whatever it was, human, whatever it was, got out of the airship, and one of these people talked to him, and his name was August de Falmouth, and it was one of those. Who was it that was talked about like the UFOnauts always had those like odd names like that, like
Keel.
It's almost like August Falmouth, right? The
yeah.
Falmouth. And I just called it up because I actually knew I had this one on the computer. I looked out the front window of my house. I saw a man in very fancy old-timey dress, a black suit and top hat, 1800 style, who was walking a large Irish wolfhound on a leash. Behind him was a horse-drawn train of carriages and caravans. There were at least 5 of these carriages, very elaborate and beautifully decorated. I walked outside to get a better look. I could only see in one carriage in which there were 2 women who were dressed in bluish turquoise gowns. They had powdered wigs and were dressed more like they came from the 1700s, very fancy. Sitting opposite them were 2 men in traditional Middle Eastern type dress, still very fancy, turbans, Arabian slippers, embroidered vests, beards, and curled mustaches. Somehow I got the idea they were Turkish. I realized this whole train of caravans was headed to a funeral of some sort. Then things cut to after the funeral, in that way that dream logic sometimes does. I entered one of the caravans and was surprised that it seemed larger on the inside than I would have thought. Not unreasonably large, just more like, wow, this is bigger than I thought it would be. At the other end of the caravan was August de Falmouth and an unnamed woman, both dressed again in very fancy old-timey clothes. He didn't introduce himself, I just knew it was him. Between us on the floor of the caravan was a coffin. I got the impression that this was a ritual piece and not the coffin that the subject of the funeral was in. It may not have been the same ritual coffin we have, which I sold, by the way, but we used to have a ritual coffin, but in far better condition. On top of this coffin was a silver cooling board that itself was coffin-shaped, etched and very beautiful. It was sitting on top of the coffin, but turned the opposite direction, so the wide end of the cooling board was at the thinner foot end of the coffin. August stood up and gestured to the coffin board, kind of waving his hand over it, and he said, 1 turn on a slab, and that was the end. I was there for him, and he for me, at which point I woke up.
So did this guy also see an airship?
He was, just the name was the guy that came out of the airship, one of the stories. So I knew nothing about what he looked like, but I love the name. I was like, oh man, I wish, like I said, if I didn't already write books under Timothy Renner, I would have just started writing books under August de Falmouth. So, but like this was now 2 things. Like number one, I immediately had the feeling like this is not just a big dream. This is a huge dream. Whatever this is, huge. The other thing is until I read that now, the only thing I remembered was that I met August de Falmouth and there was a coffin, right? So all that detail was gone in my head until I reread it. Which is why we write them down, right?
Yes.
That was an incredible amount of detail. All of it was gone. I didn't remember anything about the caravan and the people in Turkish dress, all that. None of that did I remember.
And there's like some deep stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what it's the language of symbols.
Yeah. And I love it I always love it when again, like when we were talking about Fatima, when these entities speak, I always love it. And the fact that I remembered what he said, I remember waking up, it's like, I have to write that down. 1 turn on the slab, and that was the end. I was there for him and he for me. I was like, oh, that's whatever that is. I need to write that down. So it was really cool. I really like. Now exactly what it means, I'm not sure, but it was a super. I know I woke up just in a state of oh, that was important.
Yes, yeah. And sometimes I make the mistake of going, oh, I should write that down. I'll do it when I wake up.
Yeah,
and then you go back to sleep and it's gone. Yeah,
it's gone. Yeah.
No, but it was really, what was it? It was really good. Sometimes you can catch the thread. You'll pick up one piece of it and it'll start to kind of open up a little bit, but it's never quite the same.
No, yeah. I used to keep a book. I should probably start doing it again right by the bed. And if I'd wake up in the middle of the night, I'd write it down then. I would take the time, no, write it down, at least get the details.
Yeah.
Sometimes I wake up in the morning what's that word? But for the most part, you get the details down.
Yeah, I did that for a long time, and now I just use the voice to text on my phone and still go, what?
Yeah.
Because
a lot of people. Yeah.
I'm sleepily talking into the phone, which doesn't get 100% of the stuff, even if you're clear and enunciating perfectly, it'll still sometimes get a different word in there, and I'll read it back and go, I don't even know what this means anymore.
Allison's a very light sleeper. I can see her waking up what are you talking? What are you doing? Better if I just write it down.
Yeah, but I would do the same thing. I'd scribble it down and then I'd look at it and be like, what is that word?
Yeah.
I have numerous entries in my journals where it's I wrote down the dream and all I have is this is what I wrote, and it'll be a selection of words and I have no memory of what they meant.
Yeah.
But
do you ever have recurring dreams?
Yes. Yeah. And it's usually things I need to deal with in some form. And then when I figure it out, they stop.
Interesting.
And sometimes
I have a recurring dream about it. It seems like a school that's underground, like a high school or a community college or something, but I don't think it was always that. It seems like it was like maybe some kind of government building that they turned into like a high school, but now it's abandoned. And I go there, like I've gone there so many times in dreams, I would recognize the place, like the roads that kind of.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I would recognize the road. If I was ever on the roads, I'd be like, this is it. This is the place. I've gone there so many times.
Yep.
And it's abandoned. It's not scary. It's abandoned. The lights work down there. You know, it's like you basically climb down into it, and then you can turn the lights on. And it's like, there's nothing like particularly scary about it. It's just odd. You know, it's just weird. But I've been there, I don't know how many times. Like as an adult, I had recurring dreams when I was a kid, but they were more like weirder stuff. But this is as an adult, I have a recurring dream that's over and over again. Once a year or so, I'll have a dream about this place.
I don't know if I would count what I have as recurring dreams, but there are locations that will pop up regularly. Like the favorite one I have is a waterfall that does not exist. And in the dream, I'll be like, oh yeah, I want to go show this person the waterfall. And sometimes I have a hard time getting to it. Sometimes I get to it right away. And I always wake up and be like, oh man, that waterfall is amazing. Why can't that be real?
Mm-hmm.
Or I have a recurring dream. There's the waterfall. There's a house I live in that I've never lived in, but it's always consistently the same. And what was the other one? Oh, and there's a graveyard. There's this really beautiful graveyard, and it does not exist.
Are you sure it doesn't exist?
No. But it would be really cool if it did, and I could find it. Same with the waterfall.
Yeah, right? That would be like, I think the higher likelihood that the waterfall or the graveyard might exist than my underground institution, whatever it is.
I don't know. There's some underground abandoned places.
Yeah, it would be cool. Like I said, I would know it. I've been there so many times. I would know it. It's on a slight hill. It's surrounded by trees. There's a road that goes near it, but not to it. I would know it. Like I would totally know it.
We'll just put it out there to people to figure out where that is.
Yeah, maybe somebody will have an idea.
All right, we're out of time, but we'll do a Patreon segment. And thank you, Tim. Where can people find all of your stuff?
Strangefamiliars.com. All the links go to me. There's links to my books and the Etsy shop and everything else. And then if you don't mind, doing the whole like, subscribe, follow a thing for the Flower Path, that would help us out a lot. Just getting started with that one.
Yes, absolutely. All right, thank you.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
Tim and I continue this conversation on a Patreon-only segment, as usual. And, we get into a lot of different stuff. So if you want to become a patron, it's only $3 a month. And it helps us continue making this content for you. And you can become a patron just by going to wheredidtheroadgo.com, and there's a big link that says Patreon. You can also give a one-time donation and check out all our social media and everything else. It's all at wheredidtheroadgo.com. All right, I'll see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.